The barn lights were warm and flattering, the kind that made everybody look like they had their life together. People were clinking glasses and laughing like they'd practiced it. And then this woman I'd never seen before walked right up to me, didn't smile, didn't introduce herself, just slid an envelope onto the table. My name was on it. Full name. Like a courthouse form. I grabbed my coffee cup out of habit. It was already going cold in my hand, and I remember thinking, of course it is. I looked up to ask who she was, but she was already turning away, moving through the crowd like she belonged there more than I did. I stepped after her, weaving past a couple arguing softly about parking, and two of Ethan's friends taking a selfie near the dessert table. I called, "Hi!" "Excuse me?" But my voice got swallowed by music and polite chatter. By the time I reached the doorway, she was gone. Not, I can't see her, gone. Gone. Like she'd been a delivery service, not a guest. I slid a finger under the flap. No wax seal, no cute sticker, just paper. A stack of paper. The top corner was a receipt, folded into quarters, clipped with a tiny gold binder clip. The heading read, "Final payment receipt." For a second, I thought, is this a prank? But the paper felt too official. Too adult. Like paperwork that ruins your appetite. Let me back up. A week earlier, my life looked like a well-managed spreadsheet. I was 34, a project manager, and I lived in a Raleigh area suburb where every shopping center had a Target. Oh, a nail salon and a smoothie place that charged $8 for fruit. I liked my routines. I liked my lists. I liked buying my coffee and pretending it was still hot by the time I got to my desk. Ethan and I had been together almost 3 years. He was charming in that easy way where people leaned in when he talked, and he never raised his voice. He also hated conflict the way some people hate cilantro. Diane, Ethan's mom, was the kind of woman who wore perfume that didn't announce itself. It just arrived before she did. The first time she offered to help with the wedding, it sounded like kindness. "You two should enjoy this season," she'd said, smiling. "Let me handle the stressful parts." And Ethan, because he loved smooth, said yes before I could even inhale. I remember holding a coffee cup while she talked, nodding politely, trying to ignore the little internal alarm that went off whenever someone said, "Let me handle it." "It's just better this way," Diane said, like it was a universal truth. Better this way meant she had a preferred list of vendors. Better this way meant we didn't need to tour 6 places when she already knew the right one. Better this way meant the engagement party would be at this restored barn and modern event space outside Raleigh, where the bathrooms were nicer than my first apartment. I told myself it was fine. We were lucky. People would kill for this kind of support. And I tried to be the kind of person who didn't look a gift horse in the mouth. The day of the engagement party, my friends were texting in the group chat about outfits and parking and whether it was too early for champagne. Ethan was pacing around our kitchen in socks, checking his phone like he was waiting for a weather alert. "Mom's already there," he said. "She's got everything handled." I sipped coffee that was already turning lukewarm, because somehow my coffee was always lukewarm when I needed it most. "Handled," I repeated. Not accusing, just tasting the word. Ethan kissed my forehead like I'd said something cute. The party was exactly what you'd expect when a polished woman planned it. Everything looked effortless. There was a photographer drifting around like a quiet shark, capturing candids. There were appetizers arranged like they were auditioning for a magazine cover. Diane floated from group to group, introducing people, laughing softly, touching elbows. I got pulled into conversations about the registry, about whether we'd buy a house before or after. A friend of Diane's asked me what my parents did. When I answered, she nodded like she was filing it away. I held my coffee cup even though there was champagne available because coffee felt like an anchor. Marisol was the venue coordinator, and she moved like someone who'd solved 100 problems before you noticed there was a problem. When she passed me, she paused just long enough to say, "Claire, quick question. Do you have a minute later? About the invoice?" I blinked. The invoice? She kept her face neutral, but her eyes were steady. "Just when you can. No rush." Then she was gone again, back to work. I watched her for a second, feeling the first little crack in the evening's glossy surface. Diane tapped her glass and everyone quieted. "We're so grateful," she said, eyes shining in a way that photographed beautifully. "To welcome Claire into our family." People awed. "Marriage is about joining lives," she continued, "and joining values, doing things the right way." She looked right at me when she said "the right way," and it landed like a warm hand on the back of my neck. Ethan squeezed my waist like he was proud, like we were already a finished product. She didn't look lost. She didn't scan the room. She walked straight toward me like she'd rehearsed the path. She stopped at the high-top table where I'd abandoned my coffee for exactly 3 minutes. She set the envelope down. No card, no gift bag. Just the envelope. I opened my mouth. She turned away. Back at the table, my hands moved before my brain caught up. I opened it. On top, that folded final payment receipt clipped neatly. Under it, a printed invoice from the venue, a contract addendum, a few pages of emails printed out like evidence. My throat tightened, and I looked around, suddenly aware of how loud everyone's normal sounded. The venue invoice had a line that read, "Paid by Diane Holland. Not Ethan, not us. Diane." I found Marisol near the side hallway where the music faded into a polite thump. "Okay," I said, trying to sound casual. "What, you mentioned an invoice?" Marisol glanced at my hands. "The envelope. The papers." "You got it," she said softly. "Not a question." "Someone just handed it to me," I said, and even saying it out loud made it sound unreal. Marisol exhaled through her nose like she'd been waiting for this moment. "I can't tell you what to do," she said, "but I can tell you what I've seen." Marisol pointed to the printed pages. It was an email chain between Diane and Marisol. The subject lines were right there in bold. Subject, final guest list approval. Subject, photo list must include. Subject, speech review. Ethan. My stomach twisted at speech review. "Is this normal?" I asked. Marisol's expression didn't change, but her tone sharpened just a hair. "What? Not when the bride and groom don't know." The contract addendum was labeled something boring like event coordination notes. But there it was, in small print. Final seating chart subject to approval by host representative. Host representative. That wasn't me. That wasn't Ethan. Another clause. All speeches must be submitted to host representative for review. I felt heat climb up my chest. "Who is the host representative?" I asked, even though I already knew. Marisol didn't say her name. She didn't need to. She just tapped the invoice again. My phone buzzed. "Ethan?" I answered and kept my voice steady. "Hey, can you step out for a minute?" A pause. "Everything okay?" "Just come here." He showed up a minute later, I smiling like we were about to take another photo. I handed him the invoice. "Did you know your mom paid the venue?" His smile flickered. Not panic, not anger, just calculation. "She offered," he said. "It's her gift." "Babe, don't make this weird tonight." My coffee was cold again. It was always cold at the worst times. I flipped another page. A handwritten note in Diane's neat, confident script. "Claire will appreciate that we're doing it the right way. It's just better this way." That exact phrase. The one she'd said to my face, smiling. Ethan read it and swallowed. "This is private," he said quietly, like the problem was that I'd seen it, not that it existed. Marisol pulled out a printed schedule, the kind vendors use. What? It listed meetings Diane had arranged without us. Diane Holland plus DJ call, Diane Holland plus photographer shot list review, Diane Holland plus catering final approval. All timed during hours, Ethan and I were both at work. I stared at it and felt something in me settle into place. This wasn't over-involvement. This was management. I unfolded the receipt. The amount was huge, not just generous, strategic. It was the kind of number that makes you feel like you owe someone a version of yourself. Ethan stared at it, then at me. "She didn't have to do that," he said, like it was a compliment to her. "No," I said. "She chose to." Marisol didn't speak. She let the paper do the talking. There was a photocopy of a transfer confirmation. Amount matched the receipt. The sender name was Diane. But the memo line said something that made my skin prickle. Per agreement. Agreement with who? About what? Ethan's jaw tightened, the first real sign of discomfort I'd seen from him all night. "This is too much paperwork," he muttered. "No," I said softly. "This is too much planning." Marisol gave me a folded note, written on plain paper, not fancy stationery. "One of our staff found this tucked under the printouts when Diane dropped them off," she said. The note read, "If you're the bride, ask who approved your seating chart. Not the first time." My throat went tight. "Who wrote this?" I asked. Marisol shook her head. "Oh, someone who didn't want their job on the line." I went back into the party with the envelope tucked under my arm like a secret injury. Everyone looked the same, but I didn't. Diane was laughing with a couple near the photo backdrop. Ethan's friends were talking about golf plans. Someone asked me about our honeymoon destination, and I answered on autopilot because my brain was now running two timelines, the party everyone saw and the party behind the curtain. I held my coffee like it could keep me steady. "Sweetheart," Diane said, voice low and pleasant. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said. Her eyes dropped to the envelope. "What's that?" I didn't answer fast enough. "Claire," she said gently, "but please don't let little administrative things ruin tonight." Administrative. Like I'd found a typo, not a blueprint. Ethan appeared beside her, and I realized how quickly they could form a front without saying it out loud. "You know," Diane said softly, "it's just better this way. Less stress for you." There it was. The exact wording from the handwritten note. I looked at Ethan. He didn't contradict her. He didn't even look surprised. He looked relieved that she was handling it. My body did something calm and strange, like it decided to stop negotiating with reality. "Diane," I said, still quiet, "why does the invoice say you're the host representative?" Diane's smile didn't disappear. It tightened just slightly. "Because I'm hosting," she said. It's our family event. It's our engagement party," I said, "and our wedding." Ethan shifted. "Claire." Diane tilted her head. "Honey, we're giving you something beautiful. Don't turn it into a confrontation." Confrontation. Like my question was rude, not her paperwork. Ethan leaned in close, voice low. "Can we not do this here?" "We're not doing anything," I said. "I'm asking." He exhaled, and his tone had that soft impatience I'd heard maybe twice in 3 years. "My mom's paying," he said. "It makes everything easier." "Why are you fighting it?" Fighting it. Like I was a toddler refusing vegetables, not a grown woman refusing a leash. Diane took the papers from my hands with the confidence of someone reclaiming her property. Claire," she said, still polite, "if we're investing this kind of money, we need certain standards. That's not controlling. That's responsible." "Standards like approving my seating chart?" I asked. "Standards like avoiding embarrassing surprises," she replied. Ethan didn't argue. He stared at the floor for a second, then said, "Mom just wants it to go smoothly." Smoothly. That word again. And suddenly I understood that smooth was Ethan's highest value. Not honesty, not partnership, smooth. The witness note, the staff warning, the way the woman walked in like she knew exactly where to go. This wasn't a weird coincidence. Someone at the venue had decided I deserved to know before I signed my life away with a smile. And the person who delivered it? No, she wasn't a guest. She was a messenger. Which meant Diane had done this kind of thing before, enough times that staff had a system for intervening. Diane wasn't just planning a wedding. She was rehearsing a version of me. A version of me who didn't question the invoice. A version of me who said thank you while someone else approved my guest list and edited my speech and decided which photos mattered. And Ethan wasn't trapped. He was comfortable. I felt grief rise, sharp and clean. Not dramatic, just undeniable. Marisol appeared at my elbow like she'd been waiting. "Claire," she said softly, "if you want a quiet place to talk, my office is open." I looked at her and nodded once. I didn't want an audience. I didn't want tears on camera phones. I wanted a decision that belonged to me. In Marisol's office, the noise of the party became muffled, like we were underwater. Ethan rubbed his palms together. "Okay," he said. "Look, my mom offered to cover the wedding, but..." "But what?" I said, calm. He swallowed. "She wants input. She wants it to reflect the family." "And you agreed," I said. He didn't deny it. He just looked tired. "I didn't want to stress you out," he said. "I knew you'd react like this." React like this. Like my boundaries were a personality flaw. Ethan pointed to the email printout, almost defensive. "Mom asked me to send her your vows when you write them," he said. I stared at him. "My vows. Just to make sure you don't say something awkward," he said quickly. "You know my family." My chest felt hollow. He wasn't marrying me as I was. He was marrying a version of me that passed a review process. Diane knocked once and opened the door without waiting. "There you are," she said, gentle as honey. "I thought you might need a moment." Marisol's eyes flicked to me, like, "Do you want me to stay?" I nodded. I wanted a witness. Diane's gaze moved over the papers on the table, and I felt a strange calm. Because now it was out. The smooth surface was cracked. Diane said, still warm, "Let's be practical." She slid a page toward me. It looked like notes. A list. Headings like timeline, family photos, seating, speech. "We're investing a lot," she said. "We just need assurances. Vow, that's all." Assurances. "You mean control," I said quietly. "I mean stability," she replied. Ethan stared at the table like it might open and swallow him. I flipped the page Diane slid over. And there it was. A section titled, "In Plain Language, Post-Wedding Support." Under it, bullet points, help with a down payment. Assistance with a car upgrade. Temporary living arrangement option. Then one line that made my throat go dry. Claire transitions to family-aligned career track within 6 months. Career track. This wasn't just about centerpieces. This was about my life. Diane had been planning not only our wedding, but my future. Where I worked, how I showed up, who I became, and Ethan. Ethan knew enough to not be surprised. The papers in the envelope weren't just wedding planning. They were a life plan, with me as the variable. My hands stopped shaking. I stacked the papers like I was closing a file at work. "Diane," I said, "I'm going to be very clear." Her voice stayed sweet. "Of course. I'm not a project," I said, "and I'm not a brand asset for your family." Ethan flinched like the words were too sharp for him. Diane's tone cooled by 1 degree. "Claire, don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said. "I'm being accurate." "Ethan," I said, "if we get married, who comes first? Me or your mom's standards?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "Can we not do ultimatums?" And that was the answer. Not because he said his mom came first. Well, because he couldn't say I did. I stood and smoothed my dress like this was just another polite moment in a polite evening. "I'm not doing this," I said. Ethan looked panicked. "Claire, please, not tonight." "Tonight is when I found out," I said. Diane's voice sharpened. "You're going to humiliate us over paperwork?" "No," I said, still calm. "I'm opting out of a life where paperwork decides who I'm allowed to be." Marisol didn't speak, but she stayed right there, steady. I didn't make a scene. I didn't grab a microphone. I walked to the coat rack area where purses and jackets were piled like an afterthought. A couple people smiled at me, assuming I was heading to the restroom. I picked up my coat, picked up my coffee. It was cold enough now that it tasted like regret. Ethan followed, low voice. "Claire, just talk to me." "I am," I said. "I'm leaving." "We can set boundaries," he whispered. "We can tell her to back off. After the wedding, just get through it." Get through it. Like marriage was an endurance event, and honesty was optional. I looked at him and felt something break cleanly, like a thread snapping. "Ethan," I said, "if the plan is to survive my own wedding, it's not my wedding." His eyes glossed over, but he still didn't say, "You're right." He said, "You're overreacting." I slipped the ring off and set it down gently on the nearest table like it was fragile. "I'm not angry," I said, voice steady. "I'm done." Ethan's face tightened. "Claire, you can't just—" "I can," I said, and I am. Behind him, Diane stood a few steps away, phone in hand, already composing a narrative. I didn't give her a quote. I didn't give her tears. I gave her silence and distance. In the parking lot, I stood by my car and finally took a breath that felt like it belonged to me. I looked at the coffee cup in my hand and almost laughed. It was completely cold. I'd been carrying it all night like a security blanket. I took one last sip anyway. It tasted terrible, and I felt lighter. Not happy. Not triumphant. Just clear. I texted my best friend, "I'm coming home. I'll explain." Then I sat in my car for a minute, letting the quiet settle. The next morning, my phone looked like it had been in a fight. Missed calls. Voicemails. A long text from Diane that started with, "I'm heartbroken," and somehow turned into, "You need to think about what you're throwing away." Ethan's message was shorter. "Can we talk?" And then there was a new group chat I hadn't asked to be added to, with family members I barely knew. People were already trying to smooth it over, already trying to reframe it. I didn't respond right away. I made fresh coffee. I drank it while it was hot. On purpose. I spread the papers out on my kitchen table like a case file. Not because I wanted revenge, because I knew how image management people worked. They don't always lie. They curate. They edit. They omit. The invoice. The paid byline. The email subject lines about speech review. The addendum with approval clauses. The receipt. The transfer confirmation with per agreement. Diane's handwriting with, "It's just better this way." The schedule tying her to vendors during our work hours. The witness note, "Not the first time." It wasn't gossip. It was documentation. And for the first time, I felt truly grateful to whoever sent that envelope. Because without it, I would have married into a contract I never saw. Ethan asked to meet. I told him no. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. I sent one message. "I'm not marrying into a system where my voice needs approval. I wish you well, but I'm done." He replied with, "Oh, you're making this bigger than it is." And I realized something gentle and sad. He really believed that. For him, the cost of smooth had always been paid by someone else. This time, it wasn't going to be me. I put the envelope in a folder. I went for a walk. I let myself grieve the version of my life I'd rehearsed in my head. Then I let myself feel relief. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop negotiating. If someone hands you proof that your future is actually a plan someone else wrote, do you confront it loudly, or do you leave quietly and keep your dignity intact? What would you have done with that envelope?